Redditors who have been in such severe and enduring physical pain that they honestly would have clicked an insta-death button. What was the cause of your pain? A bone tumor tearing apart my shoulder. It was inside the joint, so any movement of any sort would cause the tumor to rub against the muscle, causing damage. Side effects of chemotherapy: an acute infection and diarrhea. Had the worst pain while moving, sitting, lying down, not to mention actually using my butt I ever experienced. Took heavy painkillers but the pain didn't go away. Thought it would never be over. 10 days of pure heck. Dang, that must be awful. Glad you're still with us. When my appendix went on me, I remember thinking it was awfully strange that the pain from surgery was pretty okay compared to what I went in for. I had a similar experience with my gallbladder. Like an idiot, I waited way too long to actually go see a doctor. By the time I did, I was in so much pain that I was begging for surgery or death. After they removed it, I was up walking after the anesthesia wore off and never took a single painkiller. I was so relieved to have it out that I didn't even notice any post-op pain. I had a tooth infection that made me want to end it all. I didn't realize how horrible it could feel. Thank goodness for modern dentistry and antibiotics. Antibiotics didn't alleviate mine, nor painkillers. It took an emergency root canal to take care of that pain. Worst thing I've ever felt. Also, one dentist told me to cool it down with ice water. I ended up freezing the nerve, then had to allow it to thaw. That was pain unimaginable. My foot was cut off and reattached. There were so many times that I just wanted to die. The pain of that is almost unspeakable. I had a buddy that got ran over by a boat, mangled his leg, but they were able to save it. He's been talking for years about having it removed because of the pain. Dry socket in 2 spots at the same time. I've had 4 children, CSEC and vaginal, broken bones, ruptured ovarian cyst. Nothing compares to dry socket. Had that. It was painful, but the scraping of the bone the doctor did, even with the local anesthesia, was the pain I will never forget. I had an abscess in 2 of my teeth at the same time, while we're on a farm in the middle of nowhere for a weekend away. I then also took too many paracetamol to try and stop the pain, which made it feel like my blood was boiling. 0/10 would not recommend. Walking up after brain surgery was pretty freaking awful. I had an 11/10 headache. I felt like I'd just been hit by a truck, and they had a hard time stabilizing me. I felt like I was freezing to death and my blood pressure was low. Then I felt like I was on fire and my blood pressure went to normal, and this repeated in what felt like 10-minute cycles for what felt like days but was more likely a few hours. I threw up about a liter of blood and other fluid. I felt incredibly weak despite being relatively strongish. Nothing I did helped me feel better, and it wasn't really the pain so much as how uncomfortable I felt. I have a fairly high pain tolerance, but I have a really low uncomfortable tolerance. I would have absolutely chosen death at that moment without question. I'm glad I didn't have that option though, because being alive is alright. It was all because of a pituitary tumor that caused me to be a giant, but I'm only 7 tall. I'm a crappy giant. TLDR. Had a pituitary tumor removed, it was less that awesome. As someone under 5 feet 2, I consider you to be a fantastic giant. Crohn's disease. Had it for 10 years now, and they have been 10 pain-filled years at that. When I was diagnosed, I'd lost nearly half my weight in a couple weeks and was in so much pain daily. Took years to get to a point where I could look ahead with any sort of hope. Warning. Graphic. When I was 11 I got an infection in my penis. Turns out the foreskin is supposed to be able to be pulled back, which mine physically couldn't. So I got circumcised. Bear in mind my foreskin had never been pulled back, so what is arguably the most sensitive part of the male anatomy was now permanently exposed for the first time. When I slept, my entire belly would scab over, including the hole, and every morning for around 2 weeks when I went to urinate my penis would begin to inflate, cracking the scabs until the scab on the end eventually burst open. I warned you. Oh my freaking life. Double lung collapse combined with a double kidney infection. I've given birth 3 times and that was a walk in the park by comparison. I could feel myself dying. Spoiler, I didn't. Kidney infection that nearly turned into sepsis. When I was 14, I spent a week on the couch in agony. My dad told me it was food poisoning for the first 2 days, and the flu after that. I mentioned kidney pains. He told me it was because I was vomiting everything back up. His fiance came home from an out-of-state work conference on day 8 of my flu. That night I woke up thinking I had been stabbed in the back. I was screaming so bad that my dad said I was faking it, but his fiance said he had to take me to the ER because I didn't look right. They ran a urine test, a few blood tests, even checked my vomit to make sure I hadn't taken drugs, at my dad's request. 2 hours later I was being admitted for sepsis symptoms and given more antibiotics than I can remember. They said if we would have waited until morning to see the doctor or not gone at all I could be dead. Oh, and I also have juvenile diabetes. I moved in with my mom a few weeks later. Migraines. Had a period of about 3 years where I'd get one that completely knocks me on my butt for 4 days at a time. I missed a lot of work. Tried tons of medications. Got CT scans. Nothing fixed it until I moved out of my mom's house. Haven't had a single one since that day, somehow. Thanks, Mom. I sometimes feel some pain under belly button and deeper in. Feels like my guts are twisting inside and tearing apart, like black holes sucking in my intestines. If I would live alone, I would scream as loud as I could, but I always bite a stick or handle of knife and silently snort, sitting on knees and beating my shins. I do it to redirect the pain, to change the focus of mind to shin, just weathering the storm. It comes about once a month, so I can say I visit heck regularly. Gallstones, which had been misdiagnosed for years. By the time I had my gallbladder removed, a flare-up would have me literally rolling around on the floor in agony. Apparently they're the closest a bloke can come to experiencing the pain of birth, but I've no idea how that's quantified. Currently have gallstones. Was due to have my operation the Saturday after the UK went into lockdown back in March. Op got cancelled and I'm still waiting, though good news is the UK have started to do operations again, so hopefully not too long now. Be 4 years next month. I've been waiting to have it took out. There are many nights I don't sleep at all from the pain now. Anal fissure, which is a tear in the meat of your anus. Sometimes it heals on its own. Sometimes you end up like me and injure yourself every time you use the bathroom. I have dislocated a knee, broken fingers, had an appendicitis, and got a chemical burn on my scalp, but nothing compares to passing out on the toilet. And while I have you, lem just say, use lube. Saliva is not lube, and don't allow your partner to ram it in like a stewardess trying to get your oversized luggage to fit into the storage compartment. I don't care how amorous you're feeling. Stop, think, and protect the butthole. Scroll too long to find anal fissure. As a colorectal surgeon, my fissure patients are among the most distressed of my patients when I first meet them, and the happiest and most grateful of patients when they are fixed. Sorry everybody. Keep up your daily fluid and fiber intake, and always go for a poo when you feel the urge. These things will help you out for more things than fissures. I had a ruptured disc that horseshoed itself around my sciatic nerve. I tried to act tough and just walk it off, but the burning sensation and constant spasms in my leg 24 hours a day made me want to die. Eventually, after 2 trips and still acting like I could handle it, I was given high-strength steroids and Norco to tide me over till I got an injection in my spine before eventually getting surgery to cut away the ruptured disc. Nothing has ever hurt as bad as those first 2 weeks without pain meds. Even after the meds and injections, it was just enough that I could stand the constant discomfort. I highly recommend people take better care of their backs and seek medical attention as soon as possible instead of holding out for it to go away like I did. Wisdom teeth. Had to get them removed because the roots were touching the nerves in my jaw. Super painful for 4 years until I finally gave in and got them removed. Couldn't eat without wanting to cry. 12 hours after C-section when I wake up and had to pee and morphine worn off. I had to stand, do a couple steps to bathroom, sit on toilet, bend to put pants on, because I'm idiot and forgot to keep them high, and go back to bed to lay. I almost threw up from pain. Nothing ever hurt that much. Food poisoning. I woke up from a dead sleep at 3 AM with what felt like a knife in my gut, and then spent the next 4 hours on the toilet wishing for death. Same exact feeling, but it lasted about 7 hours. I felt like someone stabbed me in the chest. 5 of those 7 hours I was in my bed in fetal position trying to ease the pain. When I was 10 years old, auto car run over my leg, especially on my big toe. Complete nail come off. I was able to see my skin under that and bleeding, and pain was too immense for 10-year-old me. Just for some reference, I've had an emergency C-section, a C-section wound infection that was cleaned in office with no painkillers, an adult tonsillectomy, a hysterectomy following years of endometriosis and adenomyosis, 4 wisdom teeth removed at once, and migraines, and none of them touched having both ears being manually cleaned out by an ent at age 7 during a total infection resulting from untreated swimmer's ear. My mom said he just kept scooping brown goop out of my ears as 4 nurses held me down. It was horrific. Swimmer's ear causes some incredible pain. I went septic from a misdiagnosed kidney infection and my body was starting to shut down. The pain is still indescribable when I talk about it. Wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. I went septic from an infection caused by a blood clot breaking up in my lungs. At one point I was shaking so bad that nearly every muscle in my body hurt. The body does weird things when random organs start turning off, and all of them hurt. Some weird pain in my gut. I was in so much pain I couldn't cry or move off the ground. This happened several times BTW. Have yourself checked for kidney stones. I am prone to them, and if I don't keep my liquids up I get big ones that feel like you describe. You don't always know when they get urinated out. It's when they dislodge from the kidney and scrape their way down to your bladder that's the painful part, especially as they get lodged and unstuck on the way to your bladder. I think there were 2 occasions for me. One was swimmer's ear. My ear swelled shut and the side of my head was swelling. The other was a migraine that felt like my skull was splitting open and an eagle was giving my brain a scratch. Food poisoning. I was literally on the floor, screaming and writhing in pain. Boyfriend called 911 because we didn't know what it was. While he was on the phone, I puked everywhere and it was a long night of stuff coming out of both ends. A long night. Oh geez. Anything stomach pain related is really bad. I might change my mind after reading all the other awful comments though. My first kidney stone, I had no clue what was going on. Either my kidney or appendix or something had exploded and I was slowly and painfully dying. Have you ever vomited just from pain? You keep retching even though there is nothing left in your entire system. I absolutely would have taken a quick and painless death over what I thought was a long and excruciating one. Dry socket after a bone graft. The pain was endless and unrelenting. I walked around the house pacing and howling in pain for days. Lost a ton of weight from not being able to eat for almost a month. I'm about to give birth any day now and I'm imagining it still won't be as painful as that was. My wisdom tooth was growing inwards and it cracked into 2. The pain was intense. I could not sleep. Teeth sometimes suck. Giving birth. I have very low tolerance for pain and epidural wasn't effective. Everything was supposed to be ready for the pushing and the baby really wanted out. Then my previously fully dilated cervix decided that there is still time to go back. I posted this in another thread, but DR nerve pain from a spinal injury, 24/7 of the feeling of fire ants crawling and biting my legs for several months. I was on my bicycle when a guy ran a stop sign and hit me. I went over the top of the car. I remember waking up in the ambulance and then in the hospital 2 days later. The pain that got me was the recovery process from my L2-L3 separation and the subsequent spinal cord shock from the swelling. Several weeks of little to no feeling, followed by lower half waking back up. It was as if my lower half had been dipped into a vat of honey and then staked to a fire ant hill for the few days, with it slowly getting better over the next 6 months. That is, by far, one of the most excruciating things I have ever gone through, and honestly I would rather die than go through it again. I still have intermittent tingles in the legs from time to time. I had numerous other injuries that required surgery, but the nerve pain was the worst. Had COVID. The headaches were insane. I was cowering just to try to hide from my head. Never felt a headache so severe in my life and I have had migraines. It was like I was being stabbed in the forehead, eyes and frontal brain. That's what a cluster headache feels like. Migraines and cyclic vomiting syndrome. I'll get into a loop where my head hurts so bad I can't stop throwing up, but the throwing up raises my blood pressure making the headache worse. and then I'll get dehydrated, which makes both worse. There are always a few hours in there that make me wish for an instant death button. Luckily I rarely get them as long as I don't drink any alcohol. I have a friend who got launched from the passenger seat of a car. He said that after eating asphalt and breaking his back he was ready to go. He woke up right as paramedics got there and couldn't feel his legs. He thought he was paralyzed, but it was just shock and temporary damage to his spine. So he straight up asked them to give him lethal dose of morphine. Obviously they didn't, but he was just done for until he got feeling back in his legs. Inner bleeding. In 3rd grade I was beaten down by bullies. A few hours later I started feeling very sick and my stomach hurt like heck, and I convinced my mother to drive me to the hospital. When we're right outside the hospital I start puking before passing out, but I'm not sure if it was from pain or the bleeding. Next thing I remember is me laying in bed crying from the pain. Most of the days was spent either trying to walk without puking or my legs giving up, sleeping or silently crying. Ovarian torsion. I sat up after a nap and instantly felt this intense pain. It was so bad that I couldn't walk and literally dragged myself into the bathroom where I vomited because it hurt so bad, then passed out. Turns out I had a massive ovarian cyst on the tip of my ovary and the extra weight caused the torsion. I remember the dang doctor in the tapping on my abdomen, and when I recoiled and cried she said, "Does it really hurt?" incredulously. Shattering my T12 vertebrae in a horrific car accident. After the surgeon put a bunch of hardware in my back and stitched me up, I went to my parents' house 8 days later in agony so they could care for me while I recovered. Several ribs and my hip were also cracked. Within a day, my parents and I all three got a violent 24-hour stomach bug in which we were glued to the toilets with trash cans in front. I felt like I was getting a freaking exorcism. I guess the angel of light was using my spine to jackhammer his way out of my butt. Had salmonella. I would constantly vomit if my stomach had an ounce of solid food in it, and even when it was empty, it felt like every minute I was vomiting. I was only able to have soup and tea. I even blacked out a couple times. Had one when I was walking from my room to the kitchen when all of a sudden my vision went black though my legs were still walking. I tripped over the frame of the door and fell thankfully on the floor with little injury. Back labor. Felt like a hot iron being pushed through my spine, and it kept getting worse. The more I tried to move the worse it got. So much for the walking around and yoga positions I learned to do in childbirth class. Norovirus. I caught it while on a Royal Caribbean cruise to Mexico in January just before the whole coronavirus crap kicked off. I don't think I've ever been through worse pain in my life. My dad was the first one to catch it. On our last full day at sea, it passed along to me, and I spent the entire dang day in bed in between long sessions of crapping my heart out and throwing up my stomach. I couldn't keep food down, let alone water, without puking it right back up 10 minutes later. I was hoping to chill out with some margaritas and enjoy myself at the pool that day. There was a point where I was holding my head over a metal trash can and my vision quite literally went red. Everything was tinted red, and I couldn't hear my mom trying to help me through it. I nearly passed out because I was in so much pain, and the on-ship doctor didn't even return our call. That night, I woke up at around 4 AM so freaking thirsty. Luckily, we had a metal water container with plenty of ice, so I got up and grabbed myself a glass. It was like drinking ice cold water right after you hit a pipe. I can't even begin to explain how heavenly it tasted. I was fine the next day. Once I got home, I realized I lost just about 10 pounds from that extravaganza. 10 pounds is a lot for someone who weighs 115. So, if you're thinking about going on a larger cruise ship, please wash your hands before doing literally anything. Spinal degenerative damage. Lose weight, the doctor says. Go for walks, the doctor says. Get some physiotherapy, he says. Well, alright, doc. Explain how I'm to do any of that crap when wiping my butt causes excruciating pain. Hey, I'll just go for a quick jog. Huh, haven't been able to tie my shoes for over a year, but lem just sport on out. Here, I'm an abrasive bastard by nature, but this is straight up making me nasty. It's a freaking miracle my antidepressants work the way they do, because the alcoholism would have buried me by now. If you know somebody that's a miserable old frick, do them a favor and leave them alone. Chances are they're in too much pain to put up with your crap. I feel you with the spine. I'm 23 with idioscoliosis and had an 8-tier fusion, and man did that crap give me perspective on disabilities. Overnight I became a sympathizer. I'm so sorry you're in pain. Waking up on an operating table mid-operation abroad. Totally paralyzed but excruciatingly aware. Would have been happy to die right then. What I assume are esophageal spasms. Sometimes my GERD kicks up and I can't breathe, talk, stand, walk, sit, lie down, move, exist for hours without my chest feeling like my bones hate me and are trying to squeeze my organs. Apparently it's the same pain as a heart attack. Daughter's shoulder got stuck behind my pelvic bone during birth. It's the only time in my life I've actually been able to picture anything in my head, and the image I had was of me being ripped open. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.